My name is Gerald Tan, for those of you who I don't know, one of the associate director here at the Star Career Development Center. So welcome everybody. Today's sessions is about application material. So last week we talked about the US process and understanding the whole process of searching for opportunity and what might that means for some of us who are international students in the room. Today we're going to talk about the next stage, which is about how to prepare for your material and what you need to do. And for today's session, we're going to cover our resume and cover letter, and also our references and writing sample. We're going to go into a little bit of specific on some of these topics and giving some of the important reminder for all of us who are preparing these materials for our employers today. So let's jump right in. Today's session is about resume. So let's start with the resume topic first. You know, oftentimes you hear the word CV, curriculum vitae. So that's a pretty common term that intertwine between the idea of resume and cover letter, or sorry, and CV. The concept of curriculum vitae is pretty commonly used in different places across the world. And one thing I always specific to mention is that in the US job search process, a resume is really a marketing document with a concise, tailored summary of your experience, education, and skill. So the resume should give an employer a quick rundown of some of the relevant skill sets that they might be looking for from the vacancy they're trying to fill. Versus a curriculum vitae, a CV, is a complete record of your academic and professional achievement. Sometime in the US job search process, CV is commonly used for professors applying for opportunity or academic research, or anything along that nature. So it's more geared towards people who are maybe in the PhD programs, looking to find a professorship, or looking for academic research opportunity. So oftentimes for undergraduate students who are applying for opportunity, a resume is more commonly used. But if you hear the word CV, it doesn't necessarily mean a professional academic a achievement record. It's really what they're referring to as a resume. So oftentimes if you hear people submit your CV to us, basically means if it's a corporate America and looking for private sector jobs, they're looking for information pertaining to a resume instead of a full CV. So the main purpose of a resume ultimately is to get you to the interview stage, right? So the idea is this is the first interaction the employer might have about you, and hoping that they're impressed enough from your resume that they want to get you to the interview process to verify who you are and some of the quality you can bring to the table. So with that said, some of the basic resume format, you want to keep your resume into precise marketing documents. So one page is sufficient for most of you who are applying for opportunity in the US. So keep it concise and precise is important because most of the time employer only spend about 30 to 45 seconds to scan your resume to get a general essence and a sense of a highlight of your experiences. So you want to make sure that your content is really precise in your document and be able to draw attention very quickly in the first part of your document itself. So the last case scenario is kind of keeping in the second pages, and then the second page is the most important information that you want them to know. But in reality, they may be scanning that very quickly that they may not see the second page itself. Because employers are looking for students who have perfected the documents, and this becomes your first impressions of your application process, your resume can serve as a writing sample as well. So with that said, you want to be clear and concise and be able to relay why you want to apply for this opportunity and why you want to be in this particular profession and industry. So because it's a marketing document, you want to avoid any personal pronouns. So I, me, my, his, her, yours, those abbreviations should be avoided in your resume. And one of the common things a lot of students will say is, I'm using a Microsoft Word template, or I'm using a resume template online. Trying to avoid using any template, especially those who have tables built into it, because oftentimes when you submit those applications online, it might be difficult for a tracking system on any of those company websites to scan your resume and pull content from your resume to the system itself. So ideally, most of your resume should be created in a simple, plain Word document. With that said, some of the format of your resume, again, you want to make it very clear, clean, concise fonts and style. You don't want to have anything that's too funny, too goofy, that doesn't reflect the industry standard. Font size can be between 10 and 12. So you want to make it very precise with your document. You want to make it not too small or not too big with your font size, but you want to keep it consistent throughout your resume itself. Try not to do a lot of bolding, underline, italicize, capitalization to emphasize some of the content on it. It's okay to emphasize certain content, but making sure that is not trying to bold everything and underline everything or capitalize everything to draw too much of an emphasis to all the sections on your document. Your margin of your resume can be between 1/2 inch to 1 inch wide. So you want to make sure that your document is centered on the page. So what are some of the 4 main areas that every single employer is looking for? They're looking for these fundamental 4 areas. Contact information, so a little bit about you, maybe your address, your phone number, and so forth. Education background, so certainly including your information pertaining to Baruch, which we're gonna go into detail about that. Your work experiences, and your skill sections. Those are usually 4 main areas that most employers are looking for. A little bit about your education, a little bit about your work, employment history and your background, a little bit about your skills that you can bring to the table. So what other things you can add? There are a variety of things you can add to your resume. So certainly honors and awards, if you receive any honors, if you're on Dean's List, if you have received any of the fellowships, or any of the scholarships that are interesting and prestige, certainly you want to include them on your documents. Another area that I always encourage Baruch students to do is add some of the relevant coursework on your document. Highlight most recent, most high-level classes up front and be able to describe that to the interview stage as a teaser for your qualification, your skill sets. So in your resume, certainly just list, if it's a intro to accounting or if it's a business communication classes that relate to your industry that you want to apply for, certainly add that to your resume. Project can be another way to highlight some of the interest to the industry. So if you've been doing any kind of project at home or even with your classes, certainly add them to your documents to highlight your interest or aptitude towards the industry you want to apply for. Interest can also be a nice thing to add at the end of the resume to highlight that as an icebreaker. I always say to students, if you're adding interest, making sure there's something that interesting and you can talk about and be able to show your passion to them. If you have done any publication or doing some research in the past, certainly add those publication and research in your resume could also be useful to include. Other things you can add, competitions, any of the hackathons you have done, any of the case competition, any of those challenges that you have done either within Baruch, outside Baruch, it's a good thing to also add to your resume. Getting involved in campus is always important and helpful. Employers are looking for leaders in their respective industry and disciplines. So certainly having leadership activity or involvement is a good way to highlight your ability to go above and beyond to complete your tasks and duties. Volunteer work experiences, presentation you have done, if you're part of a professional organization, certainly add them to your resume. So the idea about why you want to include some of these sections is that you want to draw interest to an employer to understand that you have an interest towards the industry. This is especially helpful, especially when you don't have a lot of relevant experiences in your resume yet. So let's say you haven't done a whole lot of internship and you're looking for experiences to start to build your portfolio on your resume. You want to start to think about what else can you demonstrate your interest to the industry or your ability to be able to work in the respective sector. So a good way to highlight, for example, will be your project experiences, your coursework, and your leadership activity, because it shows relevant skill sets that employers might be looking for from your leadership capability and your skill sets. So what not to include in the jobs in the US market? If you're applying for opportunity in the US, some of these information might not be appropriate to add in your resume. So an example will be your age, marital status, children's picture of you, or any of the inappropriate email should not be included in your resume itself. Oftentimes, I'm seeing a lot of students saying a very long, lengthy objective. It's kind of an old school at this point, and I will encourage that if you do include an objective, keep it very short, very precise. And instead of using objective statements, sometimes I will encourage you, if you're applying for opportunity with a cover letters in mind, use the cover letter to spend time explaining why you want to apply for opportunity in that particular industry sector. Might be more helpful than adding an objective statement in your resume. Trying to avoid things like responsible for, duties include, helped, those passive wordings, because you want to be more proactive in highlighting some of your skill sets. So be more active in your descriptions instead of just describing your past responsibility and your job duties. Trying to avoid having the extra lines and reference available upon request. If they're asking for references, they will be expecting you to submit a separate document providing that information. And I will talk about what that means later on in the session as well. But not necessarily using a space to highlight that is not useful and helpful. Trying to avoid typo inconsistency. It doesn't matter whether you apply for a job in the US or elsewhere. You want to make sure your documents have no typo and no errors, and making sure everything is consistent, even as close as your punctuation. If you're putting period for each of your bullet point, making sure you put it throughout your whole entire document. Your resume should not be including any information like social security number, your passport information, your bank account numbers, anything like that, because it's personal information. You want to avoid having that on your document itself. Okay, so let's start into deep dive into each one of the area. So the first thing is your contact information. So want to make sure that it's clean, it's precise, it's very specific and appropriate on your documents. Making sure everything's up to date. An example will be if you change your address, you change your phone number, if your LinkedIn URL is up to date, making sure everything is listed properly. If you're applying for jobs solely in the US, certainly keeping your US address will be appropriate if you're currently reside in a US location. If you're looking for international search process, and let's say you're applying for opportunity in your respective home country, you might have a home address. It probably is helpful to include that in your document as well. So if you're unsure about which one of them that you're going for anywhere else, you can either put one or the other address, or you can put both. Totally up to you on that end, but certainly thinking about ways to draw connections by adding locations on your document. If you have a website, this is especially helpful if anyone, for example, in the graphic communications industry, if you're in a CIS major, if you're in some of the technical background, if you have a personal website to highlight some of your past experiences and your portfolio of your skill set, add that to your resume. So a good website to use, for example, is like you may using a website like Wix.com or WordPress to start to build your own portfolio, pull some example of your work on your documents, so that you can start to showcase yourself, make yourself stand out a little bit more than other people once you have a little bit of a website to highlight some of your portfolio of your evidence of your work. And by the way, if you're putting your LinkedIn account on it, making sure you have a customized LinkedIn URL. So what I mean by that is you have a way to remove the extra wordings, letters, or numbers next to your name when you say linkedin.com/in/ maybe your first name dot last name, or first name initial last name. So you want to make sure that you can remove some of those extra wordings, the letters and numbers, by editing your LinkedIn URL from your LinkedIn profile itself. If you don't know about that, you want to learn about how to use LinkedIn, there are a variety of workshops that we also have available for students to learn about how to use LinkedIn more effectively. The second section that most employers are looking for is education, especially those employers looking for students who are interested in interning with them. They certainly will look for this information on your documents. So here on your screen, you'll see two examples of education listed in here. So for those of you who may be transferring from another school, certainly add another school on it will be helpful. If you're in a dual degree program, making sure you do indicate dual degree programs on it and make it very clean, very clean and very clear for the employer. You can see here that's a different style, but one of the most important thing you want to highlight is keep it very much consistent. So an example will be the first example. The students bold the first line of your document. Versus on the second example, the student italicized the name of the college. So you want to keep it very much consistent and clean in your documents. Just the same thing as your format that you may be expected to do throughout your document itself. For those of you first semester transfer students, you can add your previous school GPA on your documents here, and you may not have your first GPA, so you can keep it pending, you can take it out. Either one of them will be a good option for you. You're not required to put your current GPA on it since you don't have it at this point, but certainly you do include your previous school GPA if it's about 3.0 or higher. If you have space, spell out your degree. So for example, in Sigma, it's Bachelor of Business Administration. If it's in Wiseman, it's a Bachelor of Art. And if it's a Marx School of Public Affairs, it's a Bachelor of Science. So make sure you do spell it out. Both degree that you receive, if you're having an associate degree, indicate them on your documents. If you have a dual degree, making sure you do make it very specific what the degree type will be that you are expected to receive. If you have coursework and you don't want to create a separate section for it, having a coursework underneath your educations could be a useful thing to do. So an example will be, and you see the first section here, the students choose to highlight some of the accounting related classes on the student resume, but the second one may be put in separately. Again, if any questions throughout the session today, feel free to add it in the chat box. I'm happy to address some of them as well. Experience section, you want to prioritize your bullet point based on your relevancy. As far as the experience section, you want to make sure that the most recent experience is first to the least experience. But you can certainly categorize your experience into different category as well. So an example will be if you have industry-specific experiences already, you want that to be highlighted. You can create a very specific section for, let's say, internship experience or professional experience or relevant experience to be on its own category, and maybe having another experience to be a separate category on your resume. With that said, why is it important? Because then you can draw some of these relevant experiences upfront towards the top of your resume versus separating some of the other experiences on the other category as well. So within the experience section, in each experience, you want to prioritize bullet point based on relevancy. So you want to think about, okay, what I'm trying to apply for, what are they looking for? How can I incorporate in these industry lingos in it? An example to do is looking at a job ad and start to think about what may be listed on the job descriptions of the opportunity you want to apply for. What are some of the industry acronyms and lingo that is listed in your document, and start to incorporate some of them into your bullet point if you have relevant experiences that show that you have similar skill set. When you describing your bullet point, highlight and quantify as much as you can, and try not to discount any other experiences you might have, whether or not you are a childcare providers or if you're working a barista, if you have done any other part-time experiences. It's always helpful to include that in your document as well, especially when you're starting up early. You never know who might have experiences in different industry to start off their careers in, and sometimes those are also valuable skills to highlight. So an example would be, I used to work in a restaurant business, and it's always helpful to understand, and I totally respect people working in a restaurant business because I personally know what it takes to be working in a fast-paced restaurant, right? So an example will be if I'm seeing a document that show people who have done a restaurant business, it's going to draw my attention a little bit more than the other. So don't dismiss any experience that you have, but certainly once you have relevant experiences, you can start to minimize some of the bullet point underneath some of the other relatable job that you may have done. Including strong action verbs on each of the bullet point. Once you finish the resume, I will show you where to find your resume guide. It's also available on Star Search along with our website. So use that guide. There's a really nice list of action verbs in it. Always start with the strong action verb here. For example, on the example here, under the ABC holding, you will see that the student use a pretty nice variety of action verb: organize, response to, independently prepare and review, create, and attend. Even on the independent childcare example here, you will see that the student provide, prepare, and maintain. Those are really nice wording to use. If it's still happening currently, certainly include your experience in present tense. If it happens already, do include that in the past tense. Certainly including the month, year is sufficient. You don't need to know the exact date, but certainly including your seasonal hire, which is whichever month, year to month, year will be sufficient for you to include on your documents. Some of the common question people ask is there a particular number of bullet points that you should include? There isn't a particular preference on that. I always say you don't want to go more than 7 or 8 of them. If you have a really long experiences, a really lengthy couple year experiences in the company, you can certainly have more bullet points, which is understandable. If you are just recently starting out an internship, no one's going to expect you to have multiple bullet points on your document. So you can certainly pick and choose how many bullets you want to include, but making sure each bullet has a meaning and conveying a relevant skill sets to the employer. So short answer is there's no limit on it. You don't have to make every single section to be 3 or 4 bullet points for each one of them. Just making sure that you are highlighting relevant skill set to the employer. This is another example of importance to highlight. If you don't have a lot of relevant experiences yet and you haven't done a lot of employment experiences, adding leadership and activities could be useful. It could be a volunteer experience that you have done. It could be a leadership involvement that you have done both either at Baruch or any other school. Even other experiences that you have done in the community can be useful things to highlight because it does show any of the skill set that you have acquired that can be useful in the workplace. So here's an example of students who are involved with NABER at Baruch and highlighting different skill sets that the students may have. And it looks pretty nice, and it's nice talking point to the employer, what you have done in the club and activities, but also what other involvement have you done to show similar skill set might you have for the employer that they're looking for. Campus involvement, always a great thing because it develops soft skills that employers looking for. Employers looking for people have ability to convey, people ability to relate to other, people ability to lead. So these leadership activity and involvement is a good way to reference how you can bring these to the table. Skill section, this is also you want to include, especially for any of the software skills and languages, which I'm assuming all of you will have a variety of language ability and skill set. Highlight them. You know, list your level of proficiency in some of these programs. Maybe this is a good way to also go back to your job descriptions and look at what are they asking for, what employers looking for you to do. What software might they expect you to be able to utilize while you're at work? Start to incorporate those wordings and software products available in here. So this, for this example, you will see that the students looking for a highlighting technical skill set like proficiency in Bloomberg or the CRM systems. I will also encourage the student to elaborate on Microsoft Office, like what products do you use? Maybe Word, Excel, PowerPoint, Access, or any other software. If you are looking for opportunity marketing, maybe highlighting things like social media platforms, or even analytics platforms, or if you're looking for things to do with writings, maybe think about what writing software do you use, or what programming software do you use if you are tech major. So again, highlight variety of software skills in your skill section. This is also a place for you to add interest in it. So if you have a really interesting interest, so you can certainly add on to it. Interest should be, like I said, an icebreaker in the interview process. You want to make sure that you are highlighting interesting things to them. So I always say if your resume have a very strong technical background, highlight something different that they may want to learn about you that they may not seen from your past experiences. So an example will be if you have a figure skating that you enjoy, or if you like skiing, or if you love, chess, anything like that that are a little bit different than what you list on your resume. Do highlight that, because it's a nice way to show that you have a variety of skill set and different side of you from your resume. So let's go to the volunteer experience. Like I said to you, it's very important and useful to highlight a variety of volunteer experience. A way you can learn about volunteer experience, going to a website called Idealist, IDEALIST. It's a nice way to learn about a variety of volunteer experience that you can take advantage of while you're in the US, but you can look at even variety of volunteer experience across the world and even in your home country to see how can you show ways to make connection with employer and prospective colleagues, but also a nice way to gain experiences in the industry of your choice. Certification and additional coursework. If you have training opportunity, take advantage of it even while you are working remotely, or you are doing distance learning right now. Take advantage of some of these free certification and coursework to expand on your portfolio. So example will be if you're a marketing major, look at Google Analytics, Google AdWords, or Bloomberg Terminal training, or going to those open MOOC coursework, the open coursework to see are there any really interesting training and learning. You can learn basically a lot of different things, languages, to technical writings, to information pertaining to programming. So you can certainly find those opportunities on the website, on different kind of open course portals for you to take advantage of while you are quarantined at home. Other things you can also do, look at variety of opportunity for you to gain while you are also learning about training. So for example, LinkedIn has a really nice list of training opportunity that you can take advantage of online. So those are example of things you can certainly use to expand on your skill set and your knowledge to the industry by highlighting different certification and trainings related to the industry of your choice. Public Library, for example, has a program called Tech Connect that offer 80 variety technology classes throughout all 5 boroughs. Obviously, like I said to you, right now they're closed, but you can take advantage of that while they're opened in the future. Bullet point, this is where most students get stuck in it, not knowing how to write a bullet point. So think about your bullet point for each experience that you want to be very clear and concise. Like I said, always start with an action verb. So relevant skills and quality, looking back from the job descriptions of places you want to apply for and seeing what kinds of skill set, what type of actions verb do they use in describing the job responsibility. Talk about how you do some of those tasks and what you did, and using a very concise, precise format to highlight your experiences. If you are currently on those jobs, put in simple present tense. If you have completed your past experiences and highlighting your past employment, put in past tense. Highlight any accomplishment, quantify anything you can quantify on your resume, and use industry lingos and jargon. This is a good way to highlight that you have relatable skill sets and trying to avoid any first person's writing. So here's an example of how a good resume can be. Always start with an action verb, quantify as much as you can, describe your responsibility and duty, and also even including software that you have used to execute this particular task. So these are just 2 examples that can help you to get a sense of what are some of the elements of things you can do. A good activity to do if you are still stuck in this process is get a piece of paper out and write out the whole entire descriptions of some of the tasks you have done in your job, and then go back in and highlight things that you want to relate to an employer. So what got to pick and choose is think about things you want to discuss more detail in the interview stage, and start to think about what are some of the key points you would like to describe more. And that's where you can decide whether or not that particular bullet point should be included in your resume itself. Things to avoid. spelling errors, grammars, overuse of different font size, inconsistent format. Hopefully you're not using color text and paper on it. If you do a design resume, for example, I always say to students, do a black and white print test to make sure that your design element doesn't, disappear if you print it in a black and white format instead of a color, print. Resume should not be longer than 1 page. Keep it very concise and precise. It's okay to create multiple versions of your documents and start to pick and choose if you have a lot of variety of experience to highlight to an employer. Create one for a specific type of job, create the other, highlighting different experience that you may have to the other employer as well. And trying to avoid any of those internet template, Microsoft Word template, any things like that that you can skip. Before I jump into cover letter, I do want to show you where you can find your resume guide. So let me just pull up a quick website for all of you. Again, the resume guide is on our on Star Search. Also, it is available under our general website as well. So I'm going to share the screen right here. If you go onto our website, if you click on to the section for students, when you click on write a resume, from here you will see that the resume writing guide is listed in here. You can download this whole entire document, which you can see the cover letter informations here. The references that I mentioned to you next will be included in here, as well as information about action verb and sample resume. So all of the resume template in here are actually created in a simple Word document. So I'm pretty confident that if any one of us can create it in a simple Word document with these layout, I'm sure you can do the same as well. So let's jump right back into the presentation itself. Okay, so let's go into the next section, which is a cover letter. I'm going to highlight briefly about some of the element of cover letter, which is also a second most important document that you may want to prepare for in your job search in the US. Cover letter is not the same as cover page. So it's not like a traditional fax where you have to put a cover page on it. Cover letter is a document that highlights the reasons why you want to apply for this opportunity and some of the things you can bring to the table. So cover letter is very specific. That is different than a cover page itself. The idea of cover letter is to get an interview. Same as a resume, your ultimate goal is entice them enough to learn about you that they want to hear more about you in-person interview process. So your ultimate goal for a cover letter is to really hoping that the readers, which is the employer, will be calling you for interview immediately after reviewing the documents. So with that said, you want to be brief and interesting. You don't want to just basically relay anything and everything you have done in your resume to your cover letter. It should highlight whatever you can bring to the table. So those are examples of skill set. What can you bring to the table? What some of the skills and experiences may you have that you want to draw attention to the employer? So think about, confidence, positive, and eager, not necessarily aggressive. Avoid any complaint and whiny tones. You want to show that you are positive and confident throughout the process. Let the employer know what you can bring to the table, valuable assets. Not necessarily the other way around. It's not necessarily just only what you're looking for from them, but do talk about what you can bring. So an example would be quality and skills, or even software and technical background that you might have learned and acquired throughout your coursework and other experiences that might you be able to bring to the table. So with that said, there are really multiple type of cover letters out. I'm going to focus on the application material, which most of you might be looking for. It does need to be targeted to each and every single job you want to apply for. So making sure that you're not just generating one template cover letter that applies for every single job that you apply for. Why? Because it then doesn't draw along that specific reasons and why you want to apply for each and every single opportunity. And the only reasons why probably in that scenario will be, I'm just looking for a job. which you and I know that employers know that, but you want to draw a little bit more specific reasoning why you want to apply for that particular opportunity or for that particular job itself. So it's very important that you want to look at the job descriptions in this case and start to think about what are 1 or 2 things you want to highlight to an employer that you want to bring it to their attention. Start to think about what relatable experiences and what 1 or 2 skill sets that you want to highlight. So in other words, if I'm going to ask you the question, why you want to work here and what you can bring to the table, you want to be able to answer those 2 questions in your cover letter. Do you showcase skill set to the job? So this is where you want to start to match it. So not every single thing you can do, but what are 1 or 2 things you want to draw to attention that really makes you stand out in the process. They usually have 3 paragraphs. The first paragraph is an introduction paragraph, describe who you are, what job you want to apply for, when. So if you want a summer internship, highlight that. If you're applying for fall internship, highlight that. You're applying for full-time opportunity and do indicate when you graduate. That can be very important and helpful as well. Clarifying where you learn about the job, if you're applying through our started system, if you're applying through Indeed, you're applying through the company website, where is it that you're looking for, and where did you come across the job ads can also be useful things to let the employer know. The second or third paragraph should be the most important paragraph of your document. Do explain your interest in the job and organization. This is where you want to be specific about highlighting transferable skill set to an employer. I always tell my students, think about what are some of the ability that you can bring to the table. So maybe think about your ability to relay, your ability to analyze, your ability to communicate, your ability to synthesize information, your ability to manage multiple projects concurrently. So start to think about 1 or 2 of these ability and start to think about example to demonstrate how well you have done that. And use that as a tactic to start to build up your body paragraph of your document. So in other words, it shouldn't be a summary of everything you have done, but really highlighting your transferable skill set. That's why I always say, try not to use multiple examples. You don't want to say multiple things, so it becomes very general, but not specific enough. You do want to highlight 1 or 2 specific skill sets, an example to demonstrate them. The third paragraph, or even the 4th paragraph in some essence, is to discuss why you want to work for this organization and showing appreciation or interest to discuss further. So in other words, ask for interview at that stage. So like I said, first paragraph, tell me the reasons why, explain a little bit of why you're applying for. Are you to inquire for opportunity? Are you applying for summer internship? Are you applying for full-time opportunity? When are you graduating? What are you studying? Those are things that can be useful if you're looking for a particular source, if you're applying for a job through their website, if you're applying for a job through our office, indicate that. Maybe even describe which role you're applying for, which position that you're applying for. And you can end it by adding a little bit about who you are. Maybe 1 or 2 lines to summarize your experiences in an essence to entice them to read the second paragraph. Speaking of second paragraph, you can always start with transferable skills. I always encourage students to think about what will be 1 or 2 transferable skills you want to relate to them. So an example here, my past experience had taught me the importance of taking initiative at my job and in school. Without reading further, I already get a sense of this particular reader want me to learn about the person's ability to take initiatives, right? So right afterward, you can then highlight 1 or 2 things that you can showcase from your past experiences that might be useful for them to know about you. So maybe an evidence to demonstrate how you take initiative at work, or evidence to demonstrate how you take initiative in school, because that's what is listed from the audience. Then you can end your paragraph by talking about how you can bring to the table, what you hoping to apply this initiative, take initiative to this particular new role and explain what you want to do further with this particular ability and task that can benefit the organization itself. So this is an example of how you use this particular framework to really relate a relevant skill set to an employer. To close your cover letters, you want to include the very short and simple things. This is where I always encourage to add 1 or 2 things about why you're interested in the company before you end your cover letter. So maybe explaining about what you have learned about your experiences researching about the company and why you believe that is a great place for you. So try not to just repeat what is listed on the website, but really spending some time describing more about why that particular company is a nice place for you to launch your careers in or gain experiences in. So try not to just repeat what is listed on the website, but really synthesize that information and try to draw upon correlation between what the qualities the company truly valued and how is that matching your philosophy and your value as well. Once you have that, it could be 1 or 2 lines, doesn't have to be a whole paragraph long, but then you can wrap it up with the closing, which is generally speaking, referring them to the resume or any materials, thanking them for the considerations, asking for interview, indicate your email and phone number on your documents. So common things to avoid, you don't want to have a letter that's too long. You want to make sure that the flow of the letter is very clean, easy to read, and is not hard to follow through. Try not to just repeat things on your resume, so it shouldn't just copy and paste a bullet point and organize into a paragraph. Do highlight 1 or 2 skill sets that you want to convey to them. Try not to duplicate your letters. Take some time, do proofread each letter before you send out, making sure that you are addressing 1 or 2 elements about the company uniquely, not just saying that I'm looking for a job. Trying to avoid sending the wrong letter to the wrong company. That's the most commonly known mistakes. Try not to just pitch for something that have nothing to do with the job. So you can say you're an amazing person who love to take initiative, but the job may not be asking for that very specifically. So that's where you can tailor your experience to each job and really look at the job description and really think about what the employers are looking for and ask yourself, well, 1 or 2 things you want to contribute to them. Maybe get some feedback from any one of us. We do offer cover letter reviews. We do offer resume review in our center, maybe asking a friend, a professor, or a mentor of yours to look at it before you submit your documents to the companies. So here's a layout, an example of a letters format into 3 or 4 paragraph structure. Always start with the top part, which is your information. So that could be the same thing as what you match with what is listed on your resume. Have your date, have the information of who you want to address to, maybe do some research on LinkedIn, take a look at who the employer contacts will be, who are the reporting hiring managers are on LinkedIn that you can start to address to that person. And then you can describe your experiences from here. This is an example that is on your cover letter and resume packet. So feel free to refer back into the documents for a further discussions and review here. Things to avoid, like I said, addressing to the wrong letter to wrong organization. You don't want to say that, I really enjoy working at JP Morgan, but you send it to Morgan Stanley for that type of opportunity. They probably gonna just ignore and delete the document itself, right? So you want to make sure you do double check, triple check to make sure everything is organized, is clean, sending to the right company, right place. Avoid any grammar and spelling mistakes. Sometime when you're working on a document for so long, you may not seen it, maybe asking multiple people to review it before you send it out so that they catch things that you might not necessarily notice and seen on your documents. Try not to use templates. So hopefully at this point you should know, and one thing I want you to walk away with, avoid template on your resume, avoid template in your cover letter, trying to customize them to every single job you're applying for. It's essential. So the next section we'll talk about is references. Reference it's used for job employment. It can also use for application for graduate schools. But one thing I do want to separate and distinguish between that is references, most of the time in the job employment setting, is asking you to a list of contact. So that's different than recommendation letter, which is used for academics, like say grad school, scholarship, fellowship, and so forth. So when you're being asked to submit a list of references, all they're asking for is a list. You don't need to reach out to your contact to ask them for a letter to support your documents unless the company specifically say, please submit a letter of recommendation. That's where you need to ask for a full letter itself from each and every single contact you have. When you're being asked references, make sure you do let your contact know that you're listing them for reference. Ask them politely and see, is it okay for me to list you as my professional reference? Once you get the approval, then you can then indicate the information on a list of usually a piece of paper with the list of their information and contact information on it. They can be your professor, past employer, working supervisors, or even some of the advisors that can list as a reference, just making sure that they have the ability to talk more about you besides what you have learned and study and be able to say good things about you. Once you have the approval, then you can gather their names, address, title, telephone number, and relationship with you. So if they're professor, indicate former professors of yours, or if they're past employer, which employer were they working at. Keep in mind, again, this is not the same as recommendation letter. If you are being asked for recommendation letters from an employer, let's say you're applying for a fellowship or graduate school, do take some time, give your references ample of time for them to put together the letters for you. The last thing you want as a persons who are being asked for a recommendation is give them 1 or 2 days for them to do a quick turnaround and full letters for you to support your application. So I always say give them ample time, politely ask, is that okay for you to write me a recommendation letter that usually gets sent directly to the company itself or the application itself. So if it's grad school, the letter itself usually goes straight from your contact to the graduate school. Take your references on the interview. If you need that, always prepare, that's okay. Sometimes they might be asking that information at the interview stage. I always say do notify them if their employer letting you know, hey, I might be checking your references. Let them know in advance. Let your contact know that someone might be contacting them. Prepare them so they're not surprised, and really giving them a copy of your resume so that they have a reference point on some of the things you have indicated in your documents for your application so that they can get a sense of what they might want to focus on describing to the prospective employer regarding you. And here's an example of what a reference list might look like. As you can see here, the name of the persons, the title, the company name, the address, phone number, email, and the relationship. We can see academic advisor, supervisor, personal reference, and so forth. Trying to avoid the last one, but do indicate if they're professor, advisor, former employer. Those are good things to include first. If they're no longer at the job and they're still your reference, it's okay to include that. Make sure including their most recent contact information. And on your relationship here, you can say former employer at this company. So that's something you can add to your documents. So the last thing we're going to talk about is writing sample, and then we'll leave some time for questions here. Sometime your employer may be asking you to provide a writing sample. So what is that? Writing sample, it's a good way to get a sense of your writing besides your document itself. So people already know that your documents is very structured, your cover letter is probably being reviewed so many times. Writing sample can be a nice way to get a sense of your writing style and your skill set. Oftentimes, companies that are looking for students who are applying for opportunity that with heavy writing might be asking for it. An example be if you're looking for a PR related job, public relations, journalism, writers, editorial staff, those are pretty commonly known as an application that might ask you for writing sample. Some of these jobs are looking for a sense of your writing. You should be, when you're asking to submit your writing sample, you should really submit the best quality of your writing that you have done. Ideally, look for those opportunities that might have, sample work that matches the type of writing that you'll be doing on the job. So an example, if you're applying for journalism related experience, think about what might be some of the journalism or writing that you have done that related to that mimics something like that. If you don't have anything that it's listed as best writing that you have, maybe, write something. Start to write something that mimic the job that you want to go for and start to review and edit that with a professional so that you can submitting your best work. If you're choosing between two paper, the better one's written one is always the better options. It's about the style writing, it's about your argument, and it's about how clean and concise can you be with your document itself. Try not to submit a 15-page paper. Try not to submit a 30-page thesis paper and you submit for applications. No one's going to read through the whole entire thing. Maybe putting the abstract of your research, if you are submitting something related to your research, just maybe 1 or 2 pages. Usually it's 2 pages, 3 pages max. It shouldn't be longer than that. Most employer will also ask you for, give you very specific guidelines on that. If they don't give you that, I'll always say your maximum space should be 3 to 5 pages long. That's a max. Ideally, 2 to 3 pages should be ideal. It can be double space. If it's single space, I would say 1 page. If you are submitting something that relates to a longer thesis, you can provide an excerpt with a notation on it. But making sure that it's something that's not too technical that people don't understand without reading the subject matter. So again, you want to think about writing sample should be a very clean introductions, very organized introduction, very organized body, very clean and easy to understand conclusion. Treat it similar to cover letter, right? Think about how can I make sure the readers are reading through the document and flow through that very nicely and get a very good argument and concise with your document. Avoid having any comments on it. If your professor have comments on your document, remove them, clean them up before you submit that new documents to the employers. Proofread them multiple times to make sure there's no typo and error. Again, this is a writing sample to gauge your past exam experiences in writing. So make sure that's the best work that you have done and there's a more well-organized, precise document that you are submitting to them. With that said, I think that's the last part of it. As I mentioned earlier, there's multiple things that we are offering to help support you in your job search process. The next one I'll be doing is a job interview process, talking about the interview techniques and how you can go about answering some of these questions. And then the following week will be the networking workshops, talking about how you can network in the US job search and job market. Tomorrow, my colleagues will be offering the on-campus recruiting programs, overview about them. If you're interested in learning about it, I will encourage all of you, please sign up through StarSearch so that my colleague can send you information about the on-campus recruiting program and workshop related to that as well.